I think at that moment, he had me. And even though I was so deep in New Age, because I had let him in, he had access to just really work on me. And so he started working on my mind, on my life, on my heart really quickly. This the peace that comes with having Jesus is unlike
Why
anything.
don't you look into Jesus? He got the answer.
Welcome to another episode of Why God, and we are excited to kick this one off. Ryan, you have a friend you want to introduce, and we're excited to hear her story.
I do. I have a friend, a niece, and a fellow sister in Christ, Bridget Kenney, who I'm just really proud of because she's just been on this quest of truth for just such a long time and just always looking for truth and looking for wisdom and basically leaving no stone unturned. And again, just really proud of her because it's been a testimony of total transformation and a testimony of courage because it takes a big person to like rehaul their entire life, everything they know from, friends to her business and just to reshuffle the deck and start anew. And that just does you just don't see that happen very much unless Christ is literally infused in your your life or her life. And so, without further ado, I would like to introduce Bridget Kenney. And Bridget, maybe you could just tell us a few words about yourself.
Hi, well, thank you so much for having me. It's truly such an honor to be here, and I appreciate your really kind introduction. It really means a
Hmm.
lot to me to hear your feedback on my story and where I'm at now. All of the encouragement has been so helpful, and you have been a key person in my life too, in helping me come to Christ as well. So the support has been amazing. And just a little bit about myself. My name is Bridget, and I used to be in the new age, and I had a really big following on TikTok talking about new age spirituality and leading people kind of into that world as I was diving deeper and deeper into that myself. And I ended up starting a business based on that. And that just grew and grew and got me even deeper into the new age. And so that's a little bit of background on like where I was at in my career. And I've since changed things around now. But yeah, that's where I stand with my online presence.
But so explain like New Age spirituality. Can you explain that for those of us
Yeah,
that you know,
yeah,
I
for
don't,
sure.
I'm not sure what that means. Yeah.
Well, let me give my 2 cents, and then Bridget can correct me and weigh in on like how drastically I fail. But I think in today's society, what you see is uh, like everybody acknowledges there's something, whether you're agnostic or you feel like there's some God, and the new age is just defining like, hey, all paths are the right path, and what your path is good path. And um, if I had to classify it as anything, it would probably fall under Buddha, like the Buddha laws, if just from the outside looking in. Um, but yeah, just and they basically just kind of take different pieces of um, Christianity and they just kind of infuse it all together, and it's just all accepting all good. And that's where you hear things like I manifest this to happen. Um, it's the universe, and but ultimately, from my observation, it seems a little bit more self-centric because you're relying on your own wisdom and you are looking to just become enlightened and to be able to elevate yourself, and it is just really lifting yourself up, so it's a little bit self-centric. So is that a good summation, or where did I fall short, or how could I have improved on that?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think that it really does encompass like a bunch of different types of belief systems in it, and all people that kind of identify as like spiritual, and they do really take in lots of beliefs from a lot of different religions, and that's what kind of draws people into it because it feels so accepting. It's like we're all right and everything's okay. And so it kind of draws people in with that acceptance when really it just brings you down like paths of deception. And it does incorporate so many different things from like Hinduism and kind of modernizes them,
Mm.
Buddhism as well. But I would say Hinduism for the most part. And yeah, just kind of repackages them. So it's actually a lot of old age stuff and repackages them and then makes them look like modernized and exciting with things like manifestation, which is really self centered in a lot of ways and making you think that you are the creator of the universe, like everything kind of is responding to you and it's all kind of frequency based and um, yeah, it just becomes more self-centered like you said versus god-centered.
So would you say that it appeals to like pride and perhaps like ego in that regard, where it's, because you're elevating yourself? Was that fair or not really?
In a way, but I think that that's very subconscious.
Mm.
I don't think people realize that that's the appeal in it,
Right.
for the most part. Yeah. And I think a lot of people go down that route when they're just kind of looking for God and they're looking to connect to something, and that route is just seems good and friendly and great. And I think a lot of people that have church hurt as well, that leave the church, end up finding new age spirituality as well because it feels like warmer and happier and better when it's really not that, like I just said.
Well, that's fair. So what do you think the pillars of the new age are? So from outside looking in, it feels like, manifesting things like,
Yeah.
and meditation seems like a really key component. And uh, I I don't know, what are some other things that are like crucial to that?
Some other things would be, yeah, definitely anything from like meditation, hypnosis, working with the chakras, a lot of energy work because it's like very frequency based. People that fall under that belief system think that everything operates under frequency. So you really just have to switch around the frequencies, whether you're doing like Reiki on someone or you are changing your own frequency in meditation. And honestly, there is some truths to it, but it's not the entirety of what makes up the truth. And so, like, you do find success in it and things are working and you can find truth in it, but it's not the truth. Um, yeah, if that makes sense.
No, I think that's a really important point that you've made, because none of us are here to say, hey, this is a total fraud, this doesn't work, because there's actually
Mhm.
something to it, and it does work.
Yeah,
And that's the thing is, and people think, well, if it works, then it must be the truth. And that's not necessarily so, because it can work to get you going down perhaps like the wrong path.
absolutely. Absolutely. And one of the main things that people say in New Age too is like that resonates with me or that feels like my truth. And they are kind of basing truth off of how they're responding to it, which isn't necessarily the best way to gauge truth from what I've learned.
So
That's
what do
right.
you, yeah, I'm curious what you like New Age, what do you believe in? Is there an afterlife? What
Mm.
what what happens after this? Like how were we created and what happens
Yeah.
next?
I would say that, New Age encompasses so many different beliefs, but I would say the common belief is that they believe in reincarnation because they do take so much from Hinduism and Eastern belief systems. So I would say they believe in past lives and they believe in reincarnation. Most importantly, they don't believe in hell, I would say. They believe in
Got it.
everything hell for
Yeah,
when you die.
it's great. Yeah. How did give me like take us back and how did you get there? I'm so and before you go, I think we should have started off, Ryan, with letting everybody know like to get to this point with Bridget has been like the enemy is really like fighting against us here. And
Yeah.
we had just some like, what we used to record this, like everything was not working. We had to delay things constantly. Like this means we're doing the right thing, which is exciting. And but going back, what got you to that point where you're like, hey, this is the path that I'm going to go, this new age path?
Yeah. That's a good question. So Ryan knows this, and I'm going to try not to like throw her too under the bus, but my mom, Ryan's sister, raised me in a new age spirituality, and she was just very open to lots of different belief systems and was just open spiritually. She was just like a lot of people, just curious and wanting to find deeper connection and also kind of excited about what it had to offer because I think there is this like excitement that it offers for people for like the idea of expansion and enlightenment and manifestation and things like that. It can feel really exciting and that really draws people in. So that was something that she was really into. And when I came into this world, I actually just naturally had a sensitivity to the spirit realm. And this is something that she noticed. And because I wasn't raised in Christianity and she didn't have any understanding of the Bible, the only understanding for what I was experiencing was that I was just a psychic and that I had these psychic abilities and these psychic gifts. And because of that, and being told that I was that, and understanding that I was that as I was trying to understand myself growing up, I think that brought me deeper and deeper into the new age world because I felt called to study it because I felt like studying new age helped me study myself and understand myself because I was this thing. I was this psychic that new age helped explain. And now I know about the spiritual gifts that are in the Bible and kind of what was actually happening there, but I just didn't have that reference at the time. So that's what kind of brought me deeper and deeper into New Age. And as I became an adult, I just was so hungry to learn and just so hungry to find truth and also to understand myself that it just got me deeper and deeper into that, whether it was just different influencers that were in the new age at the time, YouTubers, lots of different books as well. And from there, it just kind of progressed.
Mhm.
Around it? Is that what I hear? Or you had a TikTok, like a huge following on TikTok and YouTube, I'm
Yeah.
imagining. Like, give me an idea how many followers, what was that? What did that look like?
Yeah. So in 2020, I decided to start just sharing some of the things that I learned in New Age spirituality with all that I had experienced. And in addition to that, I was also really passionate about psychology and self-development. So I kind of wanted to share everything. And that just kind of quickly took off. And I ended up gaining a lot of traction on TikTok. And at this point, I'm now around like 200,000 followers. And
Jeez.
yeah, but it, yeah, all of those followers did come in through me talking about New Age. So now I feel like a responsibility to reach as many people as I can because I feel like I have, reached that many people with New Age, and who knows how many people I inspired to go down the wrong path. So I feel an even bigger pressure to, lead people down what I know to be the right path now too.
Yeah, that's amazing. So take us through that transition. Why, why Christ? Why God? How did that come out of this?
Well, it's a funny story because I was not open to Christianity. I felt really comfortable with my current beliefs and my practices, and I was really happy. I wasn't one of those new age people that, felt like they were tormented and anxiety when they found Jesus. I just felt good and happy and really satisfied with my life. So I was not very interested in in the whole Jesus thing. Even though I was such an open spiritual person, I think like Brian, you talked about that pride feeling. I definitely
Hmm.
had that. And I think that's probably why I was so resistant, is I just felt like comfortable in my belief system. And I also felt like protective. And there was that like pride present for sure. So it took a lot of like Jesus knocking at the door to get to accepting him. But yeah, there were a lot of key moments that planted really big seeds for me. Some of them were conversations with Christians where they had come to Jesus and they were in the new age. And at the time, I was just like, oh, how sad. Like, that's terrible that they stopped, doing these practices, and like they must be so restricted now, and like they're not free to be themselves. And that's just what I thought. And then also, I was someone that was very deep into meditation, doing meditations for multiple hours a day, like very diligently. And I would also go to meditation retreats, which are like week-long retreats where I'm meditating constantly, like, up to 30 hours a week. And that is actually where I first met Jesus, was when I was at one of these meditation retreats. I was in meditation and Jesus came to me and he stood right in front of me, just very calm. And he just looked me in the eyes and said, "Open your heart to me." And at the time, I think that I was just, overwhelmed to be seeing Jesus, and also just subconsciously really afraid of what that would mean. So I wasn't able to open my heart to him fully. I was just like more taking in the experience, and I was afraid. And after that, I just kept going with my business and kept going down all the rabbit holes that I was going down with my practices and belief system. And I didn't really think about him again, honestly, after that. And then he came again at another retreat and he said the exact same thing that he said the first time. And I feel so bad now looking back on it, but I still wasn't able to let him in for the same reasons as the first. And then around this time period where he came to me the second time, he had actually been reaching out to my mom as well in other ways. Like she started reading books that actually were new age, but they brought, somehow Jesus turned it around to bring it to him. They were these Dolores Cannon books on Jesus, and they aren't accurate, so I wouldn't use them as a reference, but that's what brought my mom into being curious about Jesus. And she started being more open to Jesus and opening herself up to Christianity at that time. But I was just not about it. Like I was not ready. I don't know. I was really closed off to it, and I was still like prideful and protective of my belief system and where I was at. And yeah, I'm trying to think about the third time because he came to me three times. And I want to make sure that I'm including like all the important details here.
Yeah,
With
no, quick question for you though
yeah,
on that.
yeah,
I'm so like Jesus came, like was he physically, was it audible? Was it like explain
yeah.
how he came and you saw?
So when he came to me, it was in the spirit because my eyes were closed. We wear like these eye masks in meditation. And it's not super uncommon for me to like see colors or beings in meditation, which I now know is like pretty demonic. So it wasn't like crazy for me to see a being, but of course it's a big deal to see and have an encounter with Jesus. And when he came to me, he was just wearing like a white robe, and I think there was like some blue or like a blue piece of fabric on it. And yeah, he just, when he looked at me, like the eyes were just the most prominent part about him, where they're just, you can't even capture it in like a drawing or anything. There's no way to describe like how much love is coming out of his eyes when he's looking at you. but yet I wasn't feeling like a lot of energy in my body when I came into contact with him, which is why I think I also wasn't like super inclined to engage and open my heart because I was used to these beings that would come to me and give me quote unquote like activations, which were totally demonic, and they would feel like very heightened in energy. Like I would feel a lot of energy in my body in those moments, but Jesus, it was just like very calm and very peaceful. And I didn't really feel much because he kind of waits for you to truly open your heart to him and invite him in before there's like any feeling, which I've learned.
That's nice. It's awesome.
So yeah, so you've had these couple encounters, and I know you're kind of going back and forth from your home, like in Costa Rica to Nashville. Uh,
Yes.
and so now your mom's kind of going down this path, and it's kind of got
Mhm.
you curious, and maybe uh, I think she took you to church, and you're kind of you're a little bit, I would say now you went from like not so much in Jesus to maybe Jesus curious. So
Yeah.
kind of pick up there and talk us through that.
Yeah. So I was open to church. That was something that I felt comfortable with.
Do you
And
think you were open because of your experience in meditation, or why do you think you were open?
yeah, probably just, I was just open spiritually. And
Mm.
like, I wasn't necessarily open to Jesus because I felt an extreme aversion there, but I did like want to feel open to all belief systems and kind of like try out
Okay.
different
That
things.
way you could incorporate that and check that
Yeah.
box. Basically, got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Basically, for sure.
Uh-huh.
So, yeah, my mom was getting more and more interested in the Jesus path and started going to church. And when I visited for the holidays, she brought me along to church with her. And it was a very emotional experience for me. Like, I just could not stop crying. And apparently, this is really common for a lot of people. And I know now that it's the Holy Spirit, making contact with you. And that's why you just can't not cry. It
Mhm.
just comes over you and you just cry and you don't know why. So I had a very emotional experience, and then at that same time I was home for Christmas.
Mhm.
And this is do you want me to go into the baptisms too with my mom, or is that going to take too much time?
No, let them rip. We can always
Okay.
edit it out if it gets too long.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there was a lot happening at this time because there was more than just myself kind of starting to be open to Jesus. I think Jesus really was coming after my whole family. And because of that, and he still has been, and because of that, there was a lot of spiritual warfare that ensued. And it really truly started when my mom decided to sign up to get baptized. And this was like around the same time that I came home to visit for Christmas. And she had kind of heard things like things could be hard when you decide to get baptized. Like sometimes things can happen, but she really wasn't expecting much. And then the morning of the baptism, she fell down the stairs and broke her foot in three different places. And it broke like backwards, like this. And she was supposed to get baptized like an hour later. And we ended up being super late to church. She ended up falling again on the way in, but she was so determined to go to church. She was like, I'm going. And they ended up coming out, like bringing a wheelchair. And she wasn't able to get baptized because she missed the baptism. But we sat in the back and listened to the sermon while she was like icing her foot in the wheelchair. And the sermon that day was on spiritual warfare, which
Mm.
was really timely because my church doesn't talk much about that. And that was the one day that they spoke about that. And it was just wild. And because her foot was broken, she really couldn't do much and I couldn't really do much. And so she just decided that she would show me The Chosen, the TV show on the gospel. And honestly, I was resistant to that too. Like I was like, I don't really want to watch it. Like I tried and like it was kind of boring. Like I'm not into it. And she was like, no, just watch like 3 episodes with me. You have to watch it. Like, you just need to keep watching it and it'll get better. Okay. And so she like forced me to watch it with her while her foot was broken. And sure enough, like by the time we got to the third or fourth episode, I definitely fell in love with the show. And I also felt like I had like a real connection to Jesus because I had this, reference point in the show. And I didn't have any exposure to him in any way. And I hadn't read any of the Bible yet. So that was kind of my first reference point. And it was really good for me. And I felt a connection to him. I felt like I was able to start learning his character, and that made me more open to him than I had been before. My walls started to soften in my aversion to like the name Jesus and Jesus as a person and that concept. I started to become more open to the idea of him. And so by the time we went to church the next Sunday, Jesus decided to come to me for the third and last time. And because I had been watching that show, I felt like I knew him a little better. And so when he came to me, I was just like, you know what? I'm going to say yes, and I'm going to see what happens. I'm going to see what that means, and like, let's just find out. I was just curious. I was like, I don't think anything can go wrong from this. So I might as well just see what this Jesus has in store for me and see what happens. And so as soon as I said yes, I like tried to like truly go into my heart. And I remember putting my hands over my heart space and I just said, okay. And I tried to just like let him in as much as I could. And yeah, it was just a very, very beautiful moment. It was sweet, it was peaceful, and it was emotional. I definitely cried really hard in church that day. And it was just such a special moment. And I do believe that like, that was the moment that I got saved, even though I didn't know it, because I had accepted him into my heart and I didn't know anything about that. I didn't know about accepting him into your heart or accepting him into your life, but that's what I did in that moment. And I think at that moment, he had me. And even though I was so deep in New Age, because I had let him in, he had access to just really work on me. And so he started working on my mind, on my life, on my heart really quickly. He started revealing so much to me. It started revealing more of the truth about New Age spirituality to me. And so, yeah, that was definitely,
Would you say there was ever like an aha moment, or was it like a slow progression over time where um, you just started breaking down barriers a little bit at a time?
I wouldn't say there was a specific aha moment. But those barriers that he broke down very quickly. Like he was working on my mind and on my life very fast. And it was really intense actually psychologically because I was having to unwind uh the belief system that I had my whole life. And whatever belief system you have, your psyche finds safety in. And so when I started to shake that up, I started to feel unsafe psychologically. And it was just kind of a trip to experience detangling that belief system and opening myself up to Christ more and more. But even though that was so hard on me, and I really felt like I was going crazy because that's a lot of change to happen like on the belief level. I did feel like I was going crazy, but I felt very comforted through Jesus throughout the entire experience. Like as hard as it was, there was this like rock that I could lean on throughout everything that I was going through. And that was something that I had never had before. Even if I thought I had it's not the same. It's truly so different. And that's something I've talked a lot about in my testimonies is the peace that comes with having Jesus is unlike anything else
Yeah,
that
it's
you could do.
unsurpassed. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Releases your anxiety and gives you true peace. You know, I think provided that you stay intentional and it's like a relationship that you need to work at just like anything else and devote time to and I think you get out of it what you put into it. And so, you know, he tells us knock and the door will be open, but if, you know, if you make time, you know, throughout your day and are really intentional about that, I think that's when it really works best. And I think the fruits of that are, um, I've said this before, but it's like you're totally grateful and you're totally humbled by the whole thing because you see how incredible it is and that he would think of you or remember you or even reach out to you. So you're totally humbled, and then he would forgive you for everything and
Yeah.
just give you nothing but true love. So what did that look like as you started to as you discovered he's the truth and he's the light? Like, did you buy a Bible? Did you start reading? Like, tell us what that looks like and what it looks like now.
Yeah. So because I had such an aversion to Christianity and everything, but I had just started this like personal relationship and connection to Jesus. I only felt really comfortable with just like that personal connection. So it just started out in prayer sessions actually. And I'll never forget, actually, this is a big moment. Like January 1st, I this was after I had accepted him into my heart, but I didn't know anything. I was still very deep in New Age and very
Mhm.
far gone. And I remember just getting on my knees to pray for the first time in a really long time and just like dumping my heart out to him. And also, like, even though I didn't even know what repenting was, I was like confessing and just like saying sorry. And I feel like, yeah, I was in a way kind of even doing the sinner's prayer without
Mhm.
really knowing it as well. And I felt just like instant connection to God in that moment. Like I felt him meet me so deeply when I was just like sobbing in that prayer session. And that made me want to just keep having that feeling. And so I just started to pray more and more. And I started to spend longer time in prayer. And my prayers became more of like a conversation with a friend. And I felt like I was growing more intimacy. So I would say that my connection to Jesus really started in prayer and in those like deep conversational moments. I was not ready for the Bible yet. I
Mhm.
have come a long way from that now, but
How
Right.
how was it so you know you you now have this relationship with Jesus. You've got this massive social media following, right? That you've got to, up until that point, you've got to maintain, right? And be visible about New Age and all that.
yeah.
How was that transition? How did that, like, when did you announce anything and how did that come out and what was the feedback from that? I'm really curious.
Yeah, sure. Well, when I started going through all of this and I started finding Jesus, I knew that that meant what I was currently doing was going to have to change. And in the beginning, I thought that I could kind of incorporate both because I didn't really get it yet, but that's definitely not the case. But because I knew so much was shifting in me, I just decided to take a break from posting and I just didn't post for like 4 months. But I knew I couldn't just come on and make like a short clip because TikTok is all short clip based to explain my story. So I ended up making a longer video and posting it on my YouTube channel and then telling people on my TikTok to go watch that YouTube video. And I was really scared to come out and share my new beliefs and say that I was putting everything else behind and just following Jesus, I was definitely very afraid for how people would react. And, I had worked with a lot of people. I had clients, I had people that, gave me money to support them and help them in New Age. And so I was definitely afraid for how previous clients and current clients would react to it too. There there was a lot of anxiety there, but the more time went on, the more I felt this pressure to let my following know the truth. And yeah, like I said, I felt this like duty and responsibility to share the truth because I had deceived so many people. So I knew that like it wasn't about my feelings. I just had to make that video and let them know the truth. And I also wanted people to know what I believe in now because I still had so many people texting and messaging me being like, "Hey, can I get a reading?" Like talking about new age stuff to me, and I wanted them to know, I'm not about that anymore. I'm just about Jesus. So, yeah, that was really hard, but my response and feedback that I got was surprisingly really good. And I got a lot of really nice and sweet messages from clients and friends, and they were all really understanding and accepting and made me feel really good about my switch in my belief system. And I think one of the best parts about sharing my story and coming out to my community was how many people could relate to me actually. And there were so many people that were also coming to Jesus that weren't talking about it and didn't have anyone to connect to on it. And so it's been great to speak to all of those individuals and connect with them and also support each other as we've come to Christ. And there's been more and more and more that come in constantly. And some people just that Jesus had already been working on them, and that was kind of the tipping point for them. I had people messaging me like that they decided to start going back to church or they decided to get baptized from my video. And so it's truly been just more rewarding than I could have ever imagined. And I definitely recommend for everyone to share their story.
Yeah, and
Must have been a
some
lot of relief. Sorry,
something
Ryan.
that
Yeah.
strikes me about Bridget's story is like she's just so raw and authentic, and just just puts herself out there. And I think Jesus really responds to that because she's being very courageous, and like she said, she got down on her knees and it's just she didn't even know the sinner's prayer, but she was doing it organic. I don't want to say organically, but like intuitively because it's like in us. And I
Yeah.
think that's why you had like such a like intense reaction like in that moment because Jesus just shows up for people that are like that, that are just super honest and authentic. And I think you were all those things and you're putting everything on the line. And I think we could all learn so much from that. Just you basically drew the line in the sand and you're like, so be it. And so that's incredible.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. Once you know, and you really can't go back. And once I knew that Jesus was the way, the truth, and the life, and like that was the truth, and that is the truth, that meant that everything else that I believed, wasn't the truth. All of it, not just like little parts of it. And
Yeah, you've given me two pearls of wisdom watching your journey. Like the first one that you gave me was two truths and a lie. Because like some of those new age, they give you two truths and then, inadvertently or inadvertently a lie. And so you're like, it has to be real because A and B, but what about C,
Mhm.
And then the second thing you said was, I think this was you. You basically said it can't all be right. Like you have to like pick a side. Like if this is right, then this is wrong.
Yeah.
Because there is no like all accepting, all paths lead to that.
Yeah.
That's just us making up the way. But you said like if this is right, then this has to be wrong. Um,
Exactly.
and so those are two things that I got from you that like just wisdom that you were just spouting out. I was like, wow, she was really into it.
How long ago did you was that video that you posted on YouTube?
I think it's only maybe less than 2 months old or around 2 months
That's
old.
great. That's great. And are you still like the follower? Are you still on TikTok and
Yeah.
now talking about Jesus and your new path?
Yes, I am. I tried to go through and delete as many videos that I could clearly see that were deceiving people, but also still kind of kept some of my videos from my past. I might go ahead and delete everything eventually. But yeah, since then I've just started to post, more lifestyle content, more of just me and who I am, and also just anything that has to do with Jesus that's inspiring me too. So kind of flipping around
Yeah,
the
so
platform to glorify him.
I just looked at it. She's got like thousands and thousands of views on that, and it was just 2 months ago, so it's all still pretty fresh, you know.
Wow.
So, did it feel like a car wreck? Like all your whole life just kind of got turned around, and there's like so many like dips and turns, and
It
you've
was
come
intense.
so you've come
It was,
so far in so short a time. That's what I'm trying to impart on the
thank
audience.
you.
You
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, well, all glory be to Jesus for what he has done and how he's been refining me for sure.
Hmm.
But it was very, very intense, and I didn't even go into like the extent of the spiritual warfare, but you know, Satan essentially had my soul. So there is a battle that happens on your soul when you come to Jesus, at least for me. And because I had so much influence in leading people in the opposite direction, I think it could have been more intense. And because I was so deep into, you know, the demonic spiritual realms, unbeknownst to me, it was a lot harder spiritually to come out of that. But it's also worth it. I don't want to scare anyone off from coming to Jesus. It is like the best decision that you could ever make in your life, and he will protect you through it all and comfort you through everything, even though there is a clear battle on your soul.
What's been the hardest part of the whole thing?
That's a good question. I would say just having resilience to get through the spiritual battles, because there can be days where it really knocks you down, whether it's fatigue or illness or just everything going wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
In the sense where, I mean, I didn't share this, but my mom ended up getting both of her feet broken. So I
Oh
didn't
my
have anything like
gosh.
that happen to me with coming to Christ, but it has been really intense. Um, yeah, so the spiritual warfare has definitely been the hardest part. I wouldn't say like people rejecting me or some hate comments like get to me. None of that really affects me. I don't really care. Um, yeah, that's been okay.
Yeah, it's and Ryan, we do these testimonials and Bridget's like, I grew up, I was fortunate enough to grow up in a Christian home and
Mm.
it's so awesome to think because I always think the opposite, right? Like, what if I had to ta untangle all of my beliefs over the
Yeah,
years and how difficult that would be. So, as Ryan said, I mean, what a great, you know, Jesus showed up in a huge way in your life and
yeah,
just such a huge transformation and to see that, I think as Christians sometimes we're in our own walk, right? And if you're not tending to your relationship, as Ryan mentioned earlier on
yeah,
this, you can flame out and it's such a we serve an awesome God, and there's so much love and peace in being in a relationship with Him. And I see that on you and just you're glowing Christ.
oh, thank you.
And that's such a awesome testimony that it's a Paul moment, right? Paul had an interaction with Christ and he
Yeah.
used to kill Christians, and he completely turned his life around, and struggled with a lot of the same things. But what a beautiful story, and I really appreciate you sharing it. I think it's really exciting. So now, 2 months later, I did have a question here. Like,
Yeah.
have you dove into the Bible at all? I'm curious, like, where did you start? How was
Mm,
that? Like, what has that been like for you?
Yeah. So once I became very comfortable with Jesus, I saw that my mom was also reading the Bible, and she's like, you gotta start reading the Bible a little bit. And I definitely had my aversion, but at that point I was like, yeah, I want to read it. Like I said before, like it can't hurt to just read it and see what it's all about. And I just started with Psalms actually when I first
mm,
opened it. And that just completely rocked me, to be completely honest. Like I remember finding it alone. I was in my living room in the winter and opening it up to Psalms. And I had been going through so much coming to Jesus and with, having to put my business behind and not knowing like what I was going to do as a career, like losing all my money. I'd also gone through a lot of health things. Like there was a lot that happened that you can see on my longer testimony, but I was, going through a lot coming to Jesus and putting like giving up essentially everything for him. And so when I came to Psalms in that place, Psalms is just like so perfect for that. And just give your heart to the Lord and praise him and to just like ask him to come to you. And so I didn't know that there was poetry in the Bible at all. And I love poetry. So finding that just like was so perfect for me. And it
mm.
really spoke to me. And I spent so much time crying and reading Psalms.
Yeah,
But
because it's all wisdom and just truth bombs. And like you said, when you get like one of those truth bombs dropped on you, you kind of feel the Holy Spirit and it's emotional. You're like,
yeah,
ah,
it
it just because
is.
it goes right, it cuts you right to the core. And
Absolutely. It's
uh,
beyond human emotion because it's like food for your spirit that
mhm.
I'm like giving myself for the first time in a way. And so it was just a very intense, emotional, and beautiful spiritual experience, like reading Psalms for the first time. And yeah, since then I have started to read the gospel and get through those books and reading other parts about the Bible. But that's where I started. And I think God knew what he was doing when he led me to Psalms in that specific moment.
That's awesome. That's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
So we're
Yeah.
coming up on the hour. I do you have any final words for the listeners or any bits of advice or a warning? Tell us, kind
Yeah.
of close us out, Bridget.
Sure. Sure. Well, I'll say that if you're open and you're curious to Jesus, it really can't hurt to pray and reach out to him and just open your heart to him. There's no bad that can happen, only good can happen from that. So be curious and see what he has in store for you and reach out. It just can't hurt. And hopefully my story can encourage you that it will be a very beautiful experience. So firstly, I want to encourage people to reach out and be curious and just see what he has for you.
Knock and it will be opened.
Yes, exactly. And second, just take everything to him when moments get hard and you are uncertain or you're afraid or things start changing and it becomes a lot for you. Don't rely on yourself in those moments and just try and get through it on your own. You need to be taking every single thing to his feet and cultivating that prayer life and whatever it is that you are worried about or confused about or unsure of, just take it to him and bring it to him and give it to him. And that is what brings so much intimacy and brings so much relief and has helped me have a really deep relationship with him.
Yeah, I've heard that how we talk to God is through prayer, and how He talks to us is through wisdom in the Bible. And
Yeah.
it's just interesting listening to you talk because one part of your testimony, you were talking about how you were kind of open to all things, but you were somewhat adverse to Jesus. And it's just
Yeah.
interesting because Jesus, it invokes something out of everybody. And you see it in today's society. It's literally the only
So
religion where it's
true.
openly okay to mock. I mean, you see the
Yeah.
opening ceremony where they just completely blaspheme the Last Supper, and it's just like it. And then so then you're so part of your testimony is about like a spiritual warfare, and it's like I don't think people
Yeah.
realize like how how far along we are in this kind of broken world where you can just see Jesus getting attacked, but no other religions, and it's just openly okay, and you just makes you wonder why.
Yeah.
Circling back, the final point was like you you didn't really have a bad reaction to Jesus or anything, but for some reason that one name or one word that was like the one thing that kind of made you bristle.
Yeah.
Uh, so it's just an interesting thing to think about and ponder.
Yeah. And I think that's the case for a lot of people. Um, it's a very polarizing name, and it makes sense now, like that that that's God. It makes
Mhm.
a lot of sense why it is the way that it is.
Yeah.
Hey, you mentioned, and not to go way back, and I know we're
Yeah.
wrapping up, but you mentioned, I think when you heard that your mom was kind of exploring, the teachings of Jesus, and she was watching the Chosen because she recommended that to you. You mentioned something around, and I'll have to go back and watch, but you mentioned something around like, oh, that's too bad. They're gonna, have all these restrictions or something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
What, tell me more about that. Like, what do you mean? Like, is that
Yeah.
how New Age views
Hmm.
Christianity? Is it like we got all
Definitely.
these rules and
Yeah. Yeah, so I think that definitely comes from the view of New Age spirituality and the way that they are kind of taught to view Christianity. And I think part of that is because, so many people with church hurt go into New Age spirituality and then kind of share their stories, and they're sharing like religiosity and like the trauma that they experienced from that. So I think that plays into the subconscious idea of what Christianity is and what it means. So I did think that people that were Christian, had to follow these rules, and that was constricting. And I also felt like there was a lot of shame involved in the religion because of the word sin, and like the repercussions of whether you choose to sin or not, and what is a sin. That just all felt like it was made by men, and they like wrote that in the Bible because they wanted to control people. And I truly just thought that that's why it was in the Bible. I also didn't like truly understand what the Bible is, because most people think that it's just been rewritten and retranslated so many times, and so many things have been taken out and put in that I think most people, and people in the New Age too, think that the Bible is written by like a bunch of men that um wanted to make humanity follow like their specific,
Oppress.
yeah, to
Yeah.
oppress people. So I did think that it was oppressive in a lot of ways, and that there was probably a lot of beauty in it, and like people could connect to God through it. But overall, I felt like it was like this very restrictive thing that kind of blocked people from like their expansion and their spirituality and their connection to the universe and all of these things that I thought were so amazing. But really its guidelines are for the highest spiritual protection, and I had to learn that the hard way.
Mm.
yeah,
Well said.
yeah,
Well said.
that's
So she's
awesome.
basically saying that like God's, rules or commandments are put in place to save us from
Yes.
sin because ultimately sin separates us from Christ, and that's anytime that happens, that's when bad things happen. So if people, reflect on their life, they can generally pinpoint like, okay, this sin led to that, and it just spiraled into here's where I'm at now. And that
Yeah.
can look like a number of different things, whether it's sexual
Yeah.
immortality or drugs or alcohol, all those things that Bridget referenced that are in place for our protection that the
Hmm.
New Age thinks, oh, it's very restrictive. And so we get kind of put in that box.
Yeah,
Right,
Yeah.
right.
absolutely. every single thing that is in the Bible, guidance wise, is for our spiritual protection. And I don't think you have to understand it to follow it, nor should you. And I've also learned that because there's been enough where I was like, oh, I learned the harsh lesson with those. I'm just going to go ahead and follow these other ones, even though I don't get it yet.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so there's a reason that he says everything that he says. There's a reason
Hmm.
for every single commandment and
And
instruction
it's
for
and
it.
it's
Yeah,
humbling that it's 2,000 years old and some and even older in the Old Testament, and it's still applicable in today's
Yeah,
right,
because it's just like the
yeah,
owner's manual for people. Like we're the same basically with the same. It's all the same, just different, different
right.
day.
That's right.
yeah,
That's
Like a
wonderful.
parent, right? Like don't touch the
yeah,
stove. You just touch it
yeah.
Yeah.
anyways.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I guess I won't do that, right? Because I got
Yeah,
to learn the hard way.
Mhm.
But that's what a great answer, and
Mhm.
so cool that you already understand that it's not this oppressive religion. It's a relationship with a all loving good God who wants the
Mhm.
best for you
yeah.
and loves you more than you could ever imagine. So Bridget, thank you. This has been amazing, and really appreciate you being vulnerable and coming on. You'll be sad to know that it's just Ryan's mom and my mom who watch this. So,
Yeah.
on behalf of them, I want to say thank you.
And Bridget's grandma.
And
Yes, yes.
that's right.
We're double counting my mom.
That's
Yeah.
that's great.
Hey, that's okay. I'm sure this video will find whoever the Lord wants it to find.
Amen. Amen. Well, thanks, Bridget. Appreciate the time.
Thank you.
God
Thank you
bless.
so much for having me.